evening. Welcome to another edition of the Street Peace Coalition on Chicago Cable CAN TV, Channel 21 on Chicago Comcast channels. We want to welcome you to our show and our third installment on I think this is our second season. And so we are very pleased to have the opportunity to take to the airwaves again on behalf of the Street Peace Coalition. My name is Minister Michael Muhammad. I am the founder of the Street Peace Coalition. We are a violence intervention prevention group that has taken upon itself the task and mission of going out into the community, pounding the pavement, to develop relationships, connections, create and facilitate activities that will lend themselves toward slowing down violence, toward preventing unnecessary gun conflict, toward saving the lives of individuals whom we know are trapped in a vicious cycle of a negative lifestyle, a negative behavior, a negative way of being that lends itself toward violence and murder. And so we have been in this process under the banner of the Street Peace Coalition for about 5 years now. And so we are continuing this effort, this work, out of a spirit of sacrifice and service to our community, as most of our members are formerly members of street organizations. They come from the street life. They engage in many of the various practices and ways of street life throughout the course of this, particularly their early life. And with maturity, these individuals have been blessed by the Creator to survive street life, to mature to the point where their consciousness has made them aware that as they were once a part of problems, now they must become a part of creating solutions. And so we welcome you to our show as we have some monologue, and for those of you who want to call in, we can have some dialogue about this tremendous problem of violence that is plaguing Chicago like many other urban areas. The violence in Chicago is long-standing. It is deeply rooted in the culture of what it means to be Chicago. And so Chicago is known all over the world as the gangster city. The Chicago planted those seeds early on in Chicago with the likes of Frank Nitti, with the likes of Scarface Al Capone, and other notorious, so to speak, crime bosses who were very creative with their criminal activity and very successful with their criminal activity. And that criminal activity involved many heinous acts of public violence and many dozens untold acts of private or undisclosed violence. And so Chicago's violence is not new. Chicago's reputation for violence cannot be shared exclusively by young black men in Chicago. Young black men in Chicago, if you intermingle with them, you will see our young black men and even our young Hispanic men, they will wear a t-shirt, they will wear a hat that indicates how much they idolize and fantasize about the likes of Scarface Al Capone and other notorious gangsters who set out on a path that's established the criminal, violent reputation of the city of Chicago. Unfortunately, that idolization, that mimicry, the culture that ensued not only in white communities, but transferred itself into black communities, and black communities being void of proper socialization, if you will, in terms of our identity. We have always struggled with our identity as a people in America and in Chicago. And even though Chicago has been one of the most, if not the most, segregated city in the United States of America, even though there was a time when the majority of blacks stayed among other blacks, and the majority of other ethnic groups found their own enclaves to cohabitate among their own ethnic kind, in our enclaves, we were still void of that vital ingredient that would give us a true sense of ethnic or quote unquote racial identity. And so we have always been mentally vulnerable to mimicking, to modeling, to imitating the behavior of individuals in the dominant culture. And so if we find ourselves a highly educated person, then we tend to mimic, to idol, to imitate, to try to contrive a lifestyle based upon other highly educated Europeans or whites who are here in America and have been successful to some extent or in some way in America. Our educated class tend to look up to non-blacks as their role models, as their goals of business pursuit, educational ideals, etc. And so it is for the middle class. The middle class have idols that tend to be outside of our community. And so it is with poor black people. Poor black people are bombarded with images, with mass media images, with publications and educational materials and teaching and training that has imbued in us this tendency to look up to those outside of our community. And so what I'm saying, what I'm laying the base for you to think about is that these young brothers and sisters, many of whom are totally out of control, they are not stepping or coming up out of a vacuum. This violence in Chicago does not exist in a vacuum, but we never talk about, we never over sensationalize the violence of Irish men who have a long legacy of street violence and political violence and violence in the labor field. We never talk about Italian violence this way. We never talk about Jewish violence this way. We only seem to over sensationalize violence that exists in the black community. And so we must come to terms with this contradiction in our social structure. We must come to terms with this contradiction that is allowed by the political powers, by the economic forces and political forces that seem to hyper-sensationalize black violence, but somehow when we look at violence, the long, well-established legacy of violence in other Eurocentric ethnic groups, somehow the political and economic structure, the educational platforms were able to put mechanisms in place to tamper, to taper, to moderate, to transform the tendency of their young men to engage in overt criminal activity and overt violence. But these same institutions seem very inept. They seem conspicuously incompetent when it comes to applying these same means and mechanisms to transform black violence in the black community. Something does not add up. There is a glaring contradiction when we talk about black on black violence and the role that social structure has in the perpetuation of this violence versus the role that social structures have played in other ethnic communities and ensuring that there was a move away, there was proper transition away from this kind of crude kind of living and lifestyle for the majority of its members. And so we have 70 to 90% of white men who have the opportunity to transition through education and other forms of social and economic mobility. This is not by accident. These are constructs of social engineering and the will and determination of those who have power to control and steer social institutions. But when you look at the black community, you find that, wow, as many as 75% of young black males are unemployed, are educated or miseducated. And so somehow when it comes to our community, we are looking for simple answers to very complex issues such as violence and crime in the black community. And so it is very intellectually disingenuous. It is very cowardice on our part if we keep expecting that we can continue to use the criminalization method. We can use the lockup method to solve crime in the black community versus looking at what means and methodology were used in other communities to bring stability to them when poverty seemed to be the root and other things seem to produce violent conditions in those communities. We have a caller. I'm going to go to the caller now. Caller, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Good show. Good
Thank
show.
you.
I just want to know, like, why people keep trying to make excuses. Because here we go. We had a black president in there. Nothing improved. Now we got people on TV that talk about the white man. I don't care about the white man. He's not in my neighborhood. Black men are, Hispanics are in my neighborhood. That's who I care about. I don't care if they kill each other. You don't hear about them killing each other. You hear about blacks and Hispanics killing each other. So I think the show should be more about talking about the troubles we have and the troubles the white man has, because he ain't never going to kill as many people as we do. And I'm a Mexican-American, I let you know. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, caller, for your perspective. But I beg to differ with you because human behavior does not exist in a vacuum. There's always cause and effect. And so, as I said in a previous episode, it's hard to find another society, a modern society, so-called modern society, that is not tainted or is tainted as much as the United States of America with the stain of cultural nationalistic violence. We have dropped more bombs. We've fired more bullets. We've tortured more people. We've used more biological, chemical weaponry. We've practiced more forms of violence, mass murder than any government, modern government on the planet. And so when you have a culture that feeds its children, listen, if you look at the statistics, young children are being exposed to excessive amounts of violent imagery and violent behavior from the time that they are set in front of a television. Our young people are exposed to violence. We're made to idolize cowboys who shoot people. We're made to idolize G.I. Joe. We're fed a constant diet of action movies and military movies. And so we feed ourselves as a society on the glorification of violence. And so when you factor that in to the various other social conditions, then you now have you are producing a certain kind of mentality and behavior across the spectrum. But when you isolate it to a population that is miseducated, undereducated, and a victim, a constant victim of discrimination on all levels, then it's going to produce it's going to bear certain fruits that, if we don't look at it rationally and scientifically, then we're just exposing our own prejudices about black people. Do we have another caller?
Hello?
Yes, caller, go ahead.
Yes, and good afternoon. Listen, hello?
Yes, go ahead, caller.
All right. Like the last caller, there was some kind of truth in there. But I was just listening to you then. It reminded me of something I heard a long time ago. Why is it that way? Do you think that black people, the only people that played with G.I. Joe, they the only people that looked at cartoons? Listen, why in the black community that the schools are not filled? How can you learn something if you don't go to school? How can you learn anything at home if you're not taught? A lot of time we blame that we don't have no jobs. Well, you ask a lot of people on the streets right this moment, do you want a job? No. What kind of education do you have to give? So there's a lot of reasons why. Like I said, I remember when Elijah Muhammad was down on 71st Street. Back in old days, there was plenty black businesses and neighborhoods. Well, now there's no more black businesses in our neighborhood. So again, that question that was told to me when I was very young is why? Why not? Don't say that we don't have chances, because we do. But maybe majority of people don't want to do anything. And that's what the sad thing is about. Please, thanks for letting me get a chance to speak my mind. Let me get out there so I can hear your response. And you have a great day too, partner.
Thank you for calling. Well, let me just give a little feedback on that. We're talking about why. We don't deal with violence in a vacuum. Yes, white children are exposed to many of the same type of imagery and whatnot that I mentioned. But the big difference is, there's a very big difference. You can socialize a people, you can socialize an individual in such a way that their ability to understand the difference between entertainment and reality is damaged. You can put an individual and put a group of people in conditions where they are powerless, where they are attacked on all fronts, educationally, economically, in other forms, medically, etc. And so you can create conditions where one group of people has the means, has it readily available to them, where it is culturally and socially understood that they have not only the opportunity, but they have the privilege to act out in pursuit of themselves, where other people may not have that same opportunity. And so you say, if you walk the streets and ask people will they want a job, they will say no. I beg to differ, because we walk the streets, the Street Peace Coalition, we walk the streets every week. We're out in the highways and byways talking to our people, and they do want jobs. You say the schools are empty. Well, look, this is the problem with the American people. We are the most unsophisticated people when it comes to analyzing our problems and our conditions in this society, because we are dumbed down. We are not taught the sciences of life. Okay, we're taught to to pursue a job. And so we feel as though we've done our duty as a man or a woman when we've learned the skill set of passing in an interview and getting a salary. And so we think because we receive some measure of grace or blessing or result from that menial activity, that means there's simple solutions to complex problems. And that is very, very untrue. You need to understand what motivates people to go to school. What motivates children to go to school and sit up in a classroom and pay attention? I perform services in schools with high risk, at risk, violent young people. And they will come in my session on a regular basis where they will not go in some other classroom at all. So what is the difference? What is the difference between me and the traditional teacher? If you don't understand human psychology and human behavior, if you don't understand the complex dynamics that go into the psychology of the average young black male who grows up in these type of conditions, then you're oversimplifying what is going on. And so the easy answer is that they don't want it. The easy answer is that is something wrong with the victim. So, women don't accept that because they wear a mini skirt, you get a chance, you have the right to lift up their skirt or harass, assault, or molest them, because they expect you to have some higher self-control, some higher discipline, because you can't take a simple answer to a man being a pervert, a man being out of control sexually. It's a complex thing about human behavior that is being articulated when women reject those simple answers about sexual assault. Well, the same principle applies when you look at the behavior of black people in America. We did not invent ourselves as Negroes or what we call niggers. God never made niggers. America made niggers. Well, how were we made that? What did we start out as? And how did we arrive at what we are right now? See, these are very, very complex issues that we need to calm down. Sometimes we got to say we don't know, we don't understand, we don't have the answers. We have to recognize that when answers are being put forward that go beyond the scope of what we've thought about, what we've meditated upon, or even what we've tried, then we need to fall back and listen and learn. And so you mentioned the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He rejected all of those arguments that you gave. And he put up a model and a methodology that was more effective than any other black man in the history of the United States of America in remediating the condition of black people in America. But what did he know? What science did he teach? What methodology did he use that we fail to incorporate in resolving the social phenomenon called black on black violence? That's what we've never come to terms with. It's easy to call out a man or point out a man without being fully aware of the logic and rationale that God blessed him to use to lift up black people. And so before we go off the air, I want to give everybody a chance to get in touch with us. We are, well, you can't see it. Our shot is not good right now. But we'd like for you to get in touch with us, the Street Peace Coalition, on Facebook. You can reach us at facebook.com, the Street Peace Coalition, or you can go to our website, the streetpeacecoalition.weebly.com. Send us a message if you'd like to get involved, you'd like to make a difference, even if you've got some solutions that you haven't heard us mention, if you're willing to get out there and try something new, if you're willing to really do more than sit on the couch and talk, or maybe you have resources where you can donate to help us. Maybe you have a supply, something you can contribute to help us achieve our ends. And so we are also having a father and son unity breakfast on April 29th from 9 to noon at Garfield Park Community Baptist Church at 4100 West Jackson. If you have a son, a nephew, a young man in the neighborhood, a neighbor, a cousin, we're trying to get men and sons to come out and show an act of unity while we brainstorm over solutions to the violence. We know we will never stop the violence on our own. Our goal is to impact small segments of community and save lives one by one, transform the thinking of young men and older men one by one. And so if you have any hope in black people, if you have any faith, if you're a faith person, you want to put your faith to action, you need to connect with the Street Peace Coalition, because we're not just on the air talking, we're out there every day putting ourselves in harm's way, testing our faith and testing the God of the faith that we claim. And so I want to encourage you. I want to thank all the callers. We want to encourage you to tune back into us next week, next Monday, 5 p.m. right here on Chicago Comcast Cable Channel 21. Get us some good questions together. We look forward to your calls and your comments. This is Minister Michael Muhammad signing off for the Street Peace Coalition. Thank you.